But first, I think let's go over to the view. Let's start putting some things together visually. So we're gonna go to main.storyboard, Command 0 once again to close the file hierarchy on the left-hand side, and Command Option 0 to open up the properties inspector over on the side, or the inspector on the side. And here we have a plethora of different buttons and things like that we can put into our project. We want three things. Well, actually, we want a few things, actually. So if we look at our sketch that we have here, we have our view, and our view has a question, a true, a false, a scorekeeper, and also a number of what question we have there on the page. So to do our question, let's actually put our question in a label. Let's do that again. You can always use the filter button down here. I could type in label. Label will pop up right there for me. I can drag and drop this over. Boom. And don't forget, you can let those blue lines actually help you. And over here, at the very top of the inspector on the right-hand side, you have these different areas here. We want to go to the attributes inspector. Right now, basically, in a nutshell, if you have something selected, the inspector on the right-hand side is giving you options to how you want to deal with whatever you have selected on the left-hand side. This is how a lot of Apple programs actually work. So right now I have label selected, so we have options on how to deal with that label on the right-hand side under the attributes inspector specifically. So right now it's set to just label. We could change the font by clicking on the T here and do all that funny stuff. We're not really going to do that for now. However, I would like to change the alignment here. And also the amount of lines. Right now it's only giving us one line to work with. If you would like an infinite amount of lines to work with, not worrying about how many, you just select 0 and that's it. You can also have your text auto shrink itself by making sure that there is a minimum font scale or minimum font size. You can always select that. We don't quite need it here. We're not doing anything crazy. That is our label right there though, guys. That will do just fine. We also have the ability to align these and make sure the words are wrapping around the page, stuff like that. So now what I would like to do is add our two buttons for answering the question, whether it's true or false. So down here in the filter, I'm going to type in button. I'm going to drag this button over and maybe I'm going to stretch it out just a little bit. Just line it up just a little bit. And now I would like to copy this. I could do Command C, Command V. I could also hold the Option key and click and drag on something and then let go of the Option key. And that would actually give me a copy of whatever object I wanted. So if I want to do that with label, I would hold the Option key down, click and drag. That would give me two labels. Just make sure that you let go of the mouse first and then the Option. I don't need another label, so I deleted it. So now, true, I just double clicked on the button so that I could rename it to true. And then I double click on the second button to make this false. Let's make this a little bit interesting. I'm going to click on the view controller up at the top. That means I'm just selecting the whole thing. And I'm going to scroll up here. And let's see. Actually, I'm going to click on the background. There we go. I want to change the background color. So I'm going to go down to Other here. And as you can see, you can just kind of move this guy around to get the right color that you want, that you're looking for. Now also you can take this eyedropper here, and if there's a particular color that you are looking for that you can't find, you can actually move this little guy around to get the right color that you're looking for. I think this will do for now. And then here we have our buttons. I think I want to change the colors of these. You can hold down the command key. I'm giving you a lot of commands. You can hold down the command key and click on multiple objects, and you can affect multiple things. You can go over to text color. I'm going to change that to white. Maybe that's a little too bright, so change that back to black for now. Well, it was blue before. We'll just make it black. All right, so we have our buttons set up. Let's go ahead and add 2 more labels down here. One being for the scorekeeper and the other being for the question number. So I'll go question. I'll put a little colon there. It's going off the screen. We are going to go over constraints, not in this video though. Score. In the next video, we'll go over constraints a little bit. All right, here we go. So pretty basic. Now what we want to do is we have our view. We need to set up our view controller. So command 1, once again, we can go over to our view controller folder and go new file. This time, instead of selecting Swift file, we could still do that. I just want to show you another way. You could double click on Cocos Touch class, and down here essentially you can type in a class you know exists, like we know that UI view controller. We know that that exists, and Apple will actually set that up for you, and all you need to do is provide a name of the class. For example, this would be quiz view controller. Yeah. We'll hit next and create. And here we go. Now, just like in the last video, I'm going to have us get rid of the did receive memory warning here. You can get rid of that. And Viewdidload, we talked about that. Viewdidload is just a method that comes from UI view controller. If we hold the command key and click on UI view controller and jump to definition, we get all this information about what is inside of here. Viewdidload is right here. It's one of those methods that we're calling upon in here. It's the only method that we're going to use that's from Apple inside of here, other than the fact that our class has to inherit from UI view controller in order to communicate with our view inside of the storyboard that we had created over here in the hierarchy. So command 0, I'm going to close out that hierarchy again. Let's start setting some things up. Now, one thing that we want to decide is what the current question is. So we can do that by saying var current question. And this is just something we're making up right now. And current question is going to be of type question. And we can do the equal sign and type in question. Later in another video, we're going to talk about optionals. You would have used a optional here casually, but for now, we're going to set a default value for the current question. That's going to be, are you ready to start. And we're probably not even going to use this. We're going to mark this true. There we go. And we have a current question that the page is going to start out with. That's our intention for this property. Right now, it's just a property and it's got no functionality to it at all right now. But we're going to eventually add some things. Now, we need access to our buttons and our question label. So how do we do that? If you watched the last video, you remember we could actually open up a second window over here by going over to the assistant editor. You can click on that assistant editor and you can either go to recents here, pull up recent files that we went to, main.storyboard. You can click on this counterparts here, go to manual, and you can search through the hierarchy for a very specific or particular file that you would like to open up on the right hand side here as well. I would like to open up the main.storyboard, and here we go. There's a little button down here to close up that little side gutter there, because I don't really need that right now. Just as a reminder, we have this arrow right here. This arrow is basically telling the app delegate, hey, this is the view controller that we're going to start with. But what happens if you didn't have that there? What happens if you accidentally delete it, or it's the app delegate won't know where to start? So you need to make sure, if you don't have an arrow somewhere, or maybe you don't have a starting point for some reason, or you're having trouble, make sure you go to the first view controller you want to start with. You can do Command Option 0, or you can open up the side properties menu, and we have under the attributes inspector, if you select the view controller under the attributes inspector on the right hand side, under view controller you have is initial view controller, and you can click on that, and then boom, we have our arrow here on the side here indicating that this is the initial view controller that it's going to start with. Command Option 0 to close out that inspector. Okay, so if you remember, we have the capability of literally dragging a link of a item from our view into our view controller. We hold down the control key and click, like I want to take label and I want to put it in here. I like to put all of my outlets, this is called an outlet, at the very top. It's important to adopt a style. I started working on my team, and I have kind of a mentor that I started with in iOS development, and he shared a lot of great practices with me. It's all personal preference, but at the end of the day, there are some things that will help your code run better, but if you're working on a team, you want things to look very uniform. You want things to be consistent and look the same. So you want to choose a way of doing things. So even if you don't adopt my style, at least try to create your own style of how you want to organize your code as you go along. Anyway, having said that, I want all of my outlets to be at the very top. I just like how the program looks that way, or how my class looks. So this first one is going to be question label. I'm going to hit return. Okay. Give myself a little bit of space here. And I'm going to not show myself for a second because I want to really hone in on this for a second. So we have the format IB outlet weak. It's a weak relationship between these two. That way, if it needs to release this label out of memory, there aren't any troubles. We'll probably talk about that a lot later. Now we want a score label. Oops, cancel. Control click. And this will be the score label. Connect. Open this back up. And then we have a question label. Question label. And notice that these are all var. That means that they can all be changed, right? They can be changed at any point in time. Oh, and I made this a question label again. My fault. I'm gonna right click on that. So yeah, this is going to be question number. Question number label. There we go. Now we see that there are two connections here. We don't want two connections. The app will crash because it doesn't understand what it should be connected to. It still thinks that a question label exists in our code. So we need to make sure to get rid of this. The way I got to this menu here is I two-finger click on one of my objects in the view. It'll show me everything that it's connected to and where. I know that this is connected to a view controller. Now, I'm not sure why it's allowing me to do this yet, but you may be having trouble connecting your code over or connecting your labels and assets over. So what you want to do is click on View Controller, open up the Property Inspector, Command Option 0, and you can go to this the third icon up at the top, the Identity Inspector, and we don't have a View Controller. We have the name of our class isn't View Controller; it is Quiz View Controller. You hit Return there, boom, that should work. I'm going to close this up. Now, everything that we tied into code probably will not work. It'll probably crash. So I need to reset some of these things. Let's see. Oh, no, they're set. They're good. They're good to go. Only thing I need to reset is the question label. You can do that by clicking and dragging over here. Perfect. That looks great. So these little circles here, you can click and drag those over. Just to be sure, I'm going to exit out of these. I'm going to disconnect those and reconnect them. Score. Here we go. And question. Awesome. Perfect. Now we have two more items to put in here. Now these buttons will not go over as IB outlets. IB outlets are going to be properties for you that you can affect later, or that you can change as you go, or check the status of them. But our buttons here are going to be IB actions. And remember what I told you about naming actions. You name them, naming functions, you name them as actions, as verbs. And so that's kind of the same thing that we're going to do with these. We're going to control click these over. And I like my methods, my functions, to be at the bottom. So underneath the method that was given to us, Viewdidload, I'm going to add these new methods here. Now, notice it says outlet up here. So it wants to make this button an outlet. We don't want that to be an outlet right now. We want it to be an action. So I'm going to select action. And this is going to be select true. Okay. And then same thing with false. Make it an action. Select false. Cool. There we go. All right, so we are making our way through this. We're doing great here. Now, the next thing we want to do is make sure that we have a way of holding, by the way, new command return. All right, so we want to make sure that we have a property that's going to hold all of our questions so that we can cycle through them all, okay? So we're going to do that by creating a property up here at the top. I like having one space between my properties, major categories of things. And then for functions, I do two spaces. Here we go. All right, so var, this is going to be an array. So remember all the way back we were talking about a collection of things. We're going to have a collection of questions. So this is going to be var questions, or question array. We'll just do questions for now. And it's going to represent an array of questions. In order to say that there will be an array of something, you do the square brackets, and inside you will put the type of array it's going to be, because they can only be all of the same type. They can't be a mixture or sort of different types, unless it said any. So now I'm just going to put empty brackets here.